Yeah, so here we are. It's already two. Welcome to the second session of GSGS. My name is Stéphane Gobron, and I will first present where we are in the conference event. Julien, can you just show their slide for the schedule, please? So here we are. Basically, last Monday, we had the first session concerning education with two very interesting papers, especially concerning disease such as AIDS relative disease. HIV in French, I don't know the English term, must say, sorry. And also about their stress management. Today, the session would concern the training, and we are very pleased to welcome a free speaker today. And Julien Schechter will now moderate the session. Thank you so much in advance for this great moment you will share.
Thank you very much, Stéphane Gobron, as the chair of this GSGS'21. It's my honor to be your host today. Welcome back for those who have been with us last Monday, 28th of June. We had actually a great talk with three first-time game developers in the education and prevention field. And today as well, we have many questions for our authors and creators today, and feel free to ask, of course, every question you have in the chat box that you have on the right of your screen if you are following us on YouTube, which is very nice of you. Already a few people are there with you. I would like to salute also Julien Sen. He is the technical genius wizard behind everything you see and hear. So thank you, Julien, for being with us. I'm going to introduce you to our three authors, creators, game developers for this session, but each time we will start with a video presentation of their work. When they will say a few words, and once all three of them are presented, we'll go on to the questions, and you can ask yours as well, as we have many good things to talk about. So let's start maybe with you, Alexandra Zaharia. Hello.
Hello. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you for being with us, and we'll start with your video presentation, and then we'll get to know more about you and your project.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alexandra Zaharia, research assistant at UniDistance and PhD student at University of Fribourg, under the supervision of Professors David Sander and Andrea Sampson. In today's demo, I'm delighted to present you the work at the heart of my PhD thesis, the new board games focused on emotions developed in order to serve various emotional skills and to improve them. In the first game, The Theater of Emotions, players can be actors or part of the audience. Players have to gain as many points as possible on each of the scoring tracks. Once per round, each player will take the role of the actor. For instance, on their turn, the purple player will throw the dice, hide it under the cup, and express the emotion indicated by the dice among the cards on the board. And at the same time, they have to pick randomly a phrase from the red deck and say it out loud. The phrase may or may not be congruent with the emotion the player has to express. For example, the actor has to read the sentence, "There is a bug in my burger," while expressing amusement. The purple player will win 1 point per correct answer on the first track, and the players in the audience will win points if they make a correct guess. Players will move their pawns accordingly on the corresponding track. The second game, The Kitchen of Emotions, employs the same mechanics. Throw a dice and make others guess the card indicated by your dice. However, this time, the players have to win points by using other emotional skills, such as emotion comprehension and regulation, the chef's track, and emotional perspective taking, the gourmets track. Now, once per round, players can be chefs, and the players guessing the card are the gourmets. The card to guess is an emotional event, and as a chef, you have to use special clues to guess the card. These clues are spicy emotions and kitchen tools to regulate the emotions triggered by the event. The two board games were played by 75 children in a classroom setting who reported their game experience after the play. In the graphs, we have the 5 components of the board game experience measured via a questionnaire. On a scale from 1 to 5, children reported high positive emotions and flow and immersion in both of the games. As we were hoping, they also reported very low negative emotions on the scale. Effort and difficulty were reported as being relatively on the average of the scale, which is something that is important in order to maintain the game flow. These patterns that we have found in both of our games are similar with the ones that we can find in off-the-shelf board games. Moreover, we have identified in children's codes elements that are crucial to play and games, such as positive emotions, reward, immersion, motivation, also awareness about own and others' emotions, and also the aspect of learning new emotional skills. Further, we wanted to use these games to support emotional skills in adolescents and young adults in professional transition, and compare the effects of a psychoeducative intervention based on these board games to 2 other programs based on mindfulness and improvisational theater. At the moment, we have finished the pilot phase, and now we are trying to adapt and improve the games and the intervention based on the feedback received during the pilot phase. Also, we are trying to move further to create the advanced game prototypes so that we can be ready and fit for the main study that will take place in September 2021. After the pilot phase, some of the teachers shared with us their observations. They found that playing with classmates with whom we do not share friendships might be a valuable exercise for future jobs. They also mentioned that there was an interest from some of the employers, of potential employers, in the students undertaking the intervention. Also, they have observed that they have learned more about each other's emotions, perspectives, and they also observed that their students started to use more emotion-related vocabulary. Finally, I will highlight some of the advantages of using the Cheers board games. They are easy to adapt to the player's level. We can manipulate the difficulty levels by changing the types and the number of cards on the board. We can also use a timer in order to make the game more dynamic. They are also easy to adapt to different settings, more formal settings such as educational settings, as classrooms, or informal settings such as being played with family and friends. They are theory-driven and fun and rewarding, as the quotes showed. And also they're making the emotional world more accessible because they tackle the silence and the stigma around speaking about emotions and sharing emotions, and they also try to explore various emotional skills via the mechanics and the content. Players can also forget the conflicts they have through the flow and immersion the game provides. More is to come, and we are looking forward to producing them and making them accessible to educators, teachers, children, and families. As I reach the end of the demo, I would like to thank you for your attention, and please feel free to contact me if you have any other questions. I would also like to thank participants, school teachers, and students who made these projects happen, as well as our collaborator, Entrée de Jeu, and our partners and funding, University of Geneva, the Swiss National Science Foundation, and Unidistance.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, for this presentation. Maybe you can say a few words about you, where you are, what you do, to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yes, so I'm Alexandra Zaharia. I'm a psychologist as a training. I do a PhD in special education at the University of Fribourg, and I'm a researcher at Unidistance. It was a pleasure to present board games. I felt that they're less represented maybe in the symposium, but nevertheless, I'm happy to present you this work. At the moment, it's a very challenging business to do these board games within the context of an intervention. And at the moment, just this week, we have received the illustrations and the colors to make them more colorful and more appealing to the players. So we are moving forward each week towards September 2021. We're going to use them in a more advanced phase with the teenagers that will participate in this research. I'm very open to any other questions about these board games, so I'm happy to answer if there are any.
And we will have many questions for you, and we are very proud also to have some board games aboard for GSGS'21, because we are all about serious games and gamification. It's not only online or with video games. So we are very pleased to have some board games to talk to, because there are also some game mechanics, and we have a lot to learn from board games to video games, but maybe vice versa as well. Thank you so much, Alexandra. We will move to Thomas Enriquez, who is with us today. Hi, Thomas. Thank you very much for being with us. And you have something quite incredible to show us. So we will show the video, but maybe you can just say hi so people can see who you are.
Hi, my name is Tomas, and I'm very glad to be part of this community. I hope you enjoyed the video demo, and I'm looking forward to talking with you.
Thank you, Tomas. And so, Julien, we can go to this video, because it's not always that we see new types of tools that can be used with serious gaming, and that's quite a tool. It's a controller. I will let you see it on the video.
Hi, my name is Tomas Enriquez. I'm a professor of computer and electronic music at SUNY Buffalo State in the USA. I'm also the founder and CEO of Core Haptics, a startup company creating and designing new game controllers and interfaces for human-computer interaction. I would like to introduce to you the Spring controller, a new type of game controller, and showcase it with a new game called Shape Fitter. The Spring controller is an interface for haptic 3D spatial manipulation. It offers a new design where hands move independently while being dynamically linked through a flexible spring. It offers intricate 3D hand manipulation, haptic force feedback, and also biometric feedback. The new hand-linked interface design allow hands to move independently while linked through the spring, thus offering bimanual object manipulation and also, very importantly, a dual reference point. Hands do feel and know each other's position and movement via changes in the spring's force feedback, in the spring's shape, and also changes in the 3D orientation of each of the handles. Manipulating the spring generates haptic force feedback and provides the physical experience of holding, rotating, and moving objects. Objects can be freely rotated in 3 spatial axes. Handles are moved in tandem or independently. If they are moved independently, they will allow for 2 separate sets of 3D motion to be applied to different objects and different game characters and so on and so forth. Spring compression and spring expansion can be combined with rotational motion, thus offering an extra degree of freedom. The spring controller also offers biometric feedback. The controller senses heart rate, changes in emotional response, and variations in grip force. Also of note is the fact that manipulation of the spring makes it articulate movement in space and creating a meta-gestural language, so to speak, based on the combination of 4 basic actions: compression, expansion, bending, torsion of the spring, and also shaking of the spring. These gestural visual feedback promotes hyper-realistic control of objects, which can be something very useful for training simulations and for AR and VR. This slide gives you an account of the sensing mechanisms that the spring contains. D-pad, 3 additional triggers, joystick, vibration motor, 3D spatial sensors, biometric sensors, and also audio output, and the possibility of mapping all of the motion and haptic information into light via 8 LEDs. The game Shape Fitter has been created to demo the controller, and it's a game that is based on kinesthetic manipulation of 3D shapes. The player is tasked to move, to rotate, and to morph 3D shapes and make them fit through a matching shape cradle in a wall that is approaching. The player picks up the shape by engaging the handles, grip pads. Shape rotation is done using both handles in tandem. The speed of the moving wall can be controlled via the compression and expansion of the spring, and also the shape can be moved within the game space in the Y X space by using the D-pads. I will now proceed to showcase the, the game in a more accurate way. So I will do the same to showcase the controller.
Hi, this is the Spring controller, a new type of video game controller that introduces a new design where you have 2 separate handles that are linked with a flexible spring. So that allows the user to do all types of new motions with his or her hands. You can use compression, expansion, you can rotate, you can bend, you can do torsion, you can even shake, and many other types of combinations of motion. The controller also has biometric sensors. It can detect your heart rate, basic levels of stress, and also how you are engaging with the game by measuring the force with which you grip on the handles. And the combination of biometrics with haptic feedback from the spring and also 3D motion with wrist and hand driven movement makes up for a totally new video game experience. Hi, this is a game called Shape Fitter. It was a game that was made for the controller to showcase some of its functionalities. Right now you see a shape that I'm manipulating, and these 3 shapes need to be positioned in space so that they fit through a moving wall. That wall has the exact same type of configuration to allow the shape to go through. So basically, in this case you see a cone. I'm going to move the cone, and when it's ready, actually I can exert some
force on the spring to make that wall that's coming at me to move faster. So in this case I have this pyramid-like shape which I'm orienting in 3D space, and I'm going to then make it go through the wall. Another one. So it's very simple, but it showcases how you can use the controller to move things in 3D space. There you go.
Thank you very much for your video, Thomas, and for being with us. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I'm actually a professor of music composition and electronic and computer music. That's my day job. So I have been interested in electronic music for quite a while, and I do a lot of research creating new electronic music instruments. And
so you made the music of the video game we just saw.
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah.
Cool. 80s sounds.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, actually the idea for the spring controller came from the creation of an instrument that uses a much larger spring, and that instrument actually works as a digital concertina. So, but from talking with different researchers and people actually in the medical field, they approached me and they gave me the idea of shrinking the interface down to make it like a game controller, and to be able to use all of the motion data and all of the force feedback, and then we added biometric feedback to allow the controller to really cover a wide range of sensory data. So right now we are working with medical doctors and other people that trying to find out what are the best uses for the controller. Besides,
very good.
Yeah, so I'm looking for
very interesting. No, it's very interesting, and we'll talk a lot about your controller. It's first time for me that I have someone that is inventing another controller, and we'll talk a lot about that. Thank you very much, Thomas, for being with us. I will switch to you, Olivier Lichty. Hello.
Hello, nice to be with you. I'm looking forward to the follow-up discussion.
Yeah, it's nice to have you with us for agile boosters, gamification tools in the software development industry. We'll look at your video and we'll come back to you.
What does gamification have to do with software development? I am Olivier, co-founder and CTO of Avalia Systems, and in this video I'm going to answer this question in 3 steps. Step 1, I'm going to explain why it makes sense to consider gamification when it comes to support agile software development teams. Step number 2, I'm going to explain how to concretely implement gamification and how to use a software analytics platform to build these gamification apps. Step number 3, I'm going to show that it actually works by presenting a specific case study. Indeed, gamification is very relevant in the context of software development, and I would start with 2 observations. The first observation is that software engineering is of course a very technical activity, but it's also a very social activity. And for this reason, psychology plays a huge role in the performance of individuals and teams. The second observation is that continuous improvement, supported by continuous feedback, is a key principle of agile approaches. Every agile team should do a self-assessment on a regular basis. The team should define specific improvement goals, such as increasing the quality or the pace of delivery. The team should then identify the target behaviors that can help move towards these goals. This could be the intention to write more tests or the adoption of a new automation practice. And finally, everybody in the team should commit to adopt or to reinforce the target behavior. At this stage, anything that can be done to nudge people is interesting and valuable. And this is exactly what gamification is about. Gamification is about triggering and driving behavioral change. In the context of software development, behavioral change can lead to better quality, more speed, but also to satisfaction and employee retention. this shows that gamification can have financial impacts that can be measured. To build a gamification app, you typically need first to measure some sort of activity, then you need to analyze this activity, you need to create a model, and finally, you need to create representations of the model in order to give feedback to people. You want to steer them in the right direction using these representations. So how do we do that in the context of software development? The notion of software analytics provides a very nice framework to do that, so let me introduce it briefly. If you think about it, software developers use a lot of different tools in their day-to-day activities. They write source code in IDEs, they use version control systems, they use agile planning and ticketing systems. They also use tools to get live feedback from production systems, both from a technical and usage point of view. All these tools generate a huge amount of data, and if you analyze this data, then you have a great way to understand the activities and the behaviors of people. But you also have a great way to measure the impact of these behaviors. Having said that, a software analytics platform is a software system that allows you to connect to all these data sources, to process the streams of incoming data, and finally to present information through different types of user interfaces. So most of the time, this means providing some sort of dashboard with analytics and data visualization widgets. When we started to work on Agile Boosters, we extended the Avalia software analytics platform, and in addition to our standard dashboards, we started to create more abstract ways to represent activity and progress. One motivation was to trigger curiosity of people and to engage them. Another motivation was to have a way to give feedback at the periphery of users' attention on a continuous basis. We've been doing research on ambient user interfaces and CAM technologies for a very long time, and so we knew that this was a very effective approach for what we were trying to do. Does it work in practice? Well, I've seen it work with many different teams, but let me share a concrete example. A few years ago, we were working with Softplan, which is a large tech company in Brazil. Softplan develops ERP systems across different verticals. At the time, we were working with Guilherme Brazil. The CTO was driving a large transformation program within one of Softplan's divisions. Our first mission was to conduct a data-driven due diligence to assess his organization, and we looked at the code, the processes, and the human dimensions. One opportunity that was identified during the assessment was the adoption of a social coding platform like GitHub or GitLab. Combined with other inner source practices, this would lead to increased collaboration, more automation, better code, and better documentation. This was really seen as a key step to create a culture of engineering excellence in the organization. Investing in people was a very important thing for Guilherme, and this also meant upskilling the existing employees. Having made the decision to adopt GitLab, the first step was to move from a centralized version control system to Git, the underlying system. So we prepared a course for Softplan, we gave lecturers to introduce Git concepts, Git commands, and modern development workflows. The timing for the migration was critical and the schedule was quite aggressive. So it was important that developers would not only attend the training, but that they would also do the exercises that we prepared for them on a regular basis so that they would really become familiar with usage of Git. In other words, consistency was key and was really the behavior that we wanted to influence. So in order to nudge and motivate people, we designed the Aquarium, a fairly simple gamification apps that we used during the training period. To deliver this Aquarium, we did 3 things. One, we designed a simple exercise to put Git workflows and commands in practice. Doing the exercise one time would not take too much time, something like 10 minutes. But in order to really master the commands, the developers would need to do it many times over a 2-week period. 2, we connected our software analytics platform to GitLab. Doing that, we had access to the stream of activities. We know when people were doing the exercises, and we knew if they had problems or not. Finally, we designed a very basic rule system to create a model for the behavior of the class. and we created a visual representation of this model. The visualization was projected on a public display located in the open space. Here is how it works. Every developer in the team is represented by a fish. As you complete the exercise, your fish moves up the aquarium. But very soon it starts drifting lower and lower. That means that in order to maintain your fish in the upper part of the tank, you need to do the exercise on a regular basis. Just glancing at the aquarium gives you a sense for the activity in the whole team. And this is helpful to identify problematic situations. Of course, if you see that fishes are all sitting at the bottom of the aquarium, it means that there is a problem with the training. At this point, you can move to a more traditional representation, like a dashboard, to really analyze the situation and understand the details. So, what did we observe? First, the aquarium was a very effective trigger. It prompted many developers to do the exercise the first time, just because they were curious and they wanted to see their fish appear on the screen. More importantly, it prompted conversations between developers. At the coffee break, talking about the aquarium led to talk about Git in general, but then also about the broader goals of modernizing processes and tools. And last but not least, it just worked. The transition to Git was a success. It was celebrated as a milestone by the team and the management. Of course, the transition was not successful just because of the aquarium, but the aquarium contributed to create this culture of continuous feedback and continuous improvement. And it also gave the opportunity to celebrate progress. People were happy and proud to have leveled up, and this was a key outcome of the experiment. If you are involved in software development, then I hope that this story will inspire you to try something similar. To gamify the software development process, it's possible to use all sorts of metrics and to present them to people in surprising ways. In our projects, we use code metrics, process metrics, but also business metrics to make teams more conscious of the impact of their work. We have seen that even simple gamification apps can be very effective to inform and to drive people. But beyond these apps, the real magic happens when you open the software analytics platform to the teams. When they start to play with the data fabric, with these streams of technical and business data. When they start building their own apps, then something happens. They start to more systematically connect the dots between technical decisions and business impact. And when this happens, the whole organization makes a big step forward.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Olivier Lichty was very complete and inspiring. I hope it's not your idea to put the shark at the bottom of the aquarium. I wonder what happens if you sink to the shark level. Then you get fired.
That's a good question. It was a feature that we debated a lot when we implemented the aquarium. It's funny that
I guess so, and we will talk a lot more about it in a few minutes. I would like to just take a few seconds to welcome the people that are joining us in this talk. We have with us Alexandra Zaharia, Thomas Enriquez, and Olivier Lichty. We will talk with the three of them of their pretty nice and pretty impressive projects involving gamification, board games, a new controller, and this idea of bringing gamification into the business industry. I will maybe start with one question because today we have a game, of course, but we have also some tools and some techniques, and I will start today with this need of being realistic, which is also one of the issues in a lot of games, simulations, for example. In all your projects, there is an echo to that question, and I would love to hear you on that subject. Maybe I will start with Alexandra, because you are in your project, the board game, with trying to build up our emotional skills. Can we really replicate emotions or to learn or deal with them? Should we not really like feel them rather than acting them? Is it the good tool?
Actually, it's a very good question. If we can I mean, I think that what the board games showed when we play that with players, with teenagers, with children, is that we all have different ways of showing emotions. And although research wants to categorize maybe emotions, how they have to be experienced or how they have to be shown, in practice, with this standardization does not really exist, because we are all so different and we are going to use different ways of expressing emotions. And I think one of the precious points of this research was that children were aware about the fact that we are not all the same and we don't express all the same emotion the same way. I think this made them more maybe aware about the individual differences and about how these misunderstandings could affect communication, because sometimes we don't recognize correctly the emotion in others because we have already a priori.
Thank you for this first answer. I'll go to Thomas, because your controller has impressive senses. We've seen it in the presentation, a way of making us feel something for real. I can imagine using this controller, for example, in a VR game, but don't we play games just to escape real life? Where's the fun if everything feels like so realistic?
Yeah, well, I personally believe that the more engaged you are with the game and the higher level of interactivity that you can take advantage of, the more fun you'll have. I mean, if the end goal is the fun, is to really enjoy a given gaming application, I believe that interaction is very important. And I think that having a controller that goes beyond your normal. I mean, most people play games with a classic an Xbox controller, which is a technology that has been around for almost 30 years. I mean, if you go back to the early PlayStation controllers and so on and so forth. And basically what you have with a controller is that you have almost like you have a brick in your hand. I mean, your hands are locked and you basically only move your fingers, your thumbs and so it's very limited. I mean, I do believe that when Nintendo came out with the Wiimote, that was a huge advancement because it gives you freedom of motion with your hands. But somehow the Wiimote also has not really been a controller that has stayed around, even though we do know that in VR, the HTC Vive and the Oculus do follow that type of paradigm. So what I'm trying to do with the Spring controller is like a compromise where your two hands are still connected to each other, but your hands and wrists can move. So you have all of this flexibility, and you can then engage in compressing and expanding and doing torsion and bending and shaking of the spring. So yeah, I mean, as we all know, the industry is moving more and more towards mobile gaming, where you basically just, basically don't even move, almost don't move your hands. And I mean,
and you don't need any controller on the phone.
And exactly, you don't need any controller. And on top of that, I mean, people are just using earbuds, which in terms of the reaching of sound, it's kind of scary that a lot of people, and as a teacher, as a professor, I know a lot of students that deal with nice big speakers for the first time when they came into college. So the amount of sensory data that we are missing out by restricting ourselves to the earbuds and by just playing games with 2 fingers, it's kind of scary in a way. I mean, are we evolving? Are we regressing through gaming? That's really an interesting question to address. So yeah, I mean, the controller does offer the main characteristic is the force feedback. I mean, it's really what drives the controller, and from many customer discovery experiments that we have done, that's really where the most value is. But as you said, in terms of simulations and training and so on and so forth, that's where the controller probably has its most useful applications.
We'll address this question, which is your target and what you can do with the controller. I will come to that. I will also like to hear Olivier and remind the audience that you can just ask questions in the chat room of the YouTube channel of GSGS'21 if you have any questions for our three hosts. I have many questions, but I will leave some room for yours if you have some. Olivier, if my job is gamified, well, after a while, it will still be my job. And sometimes, even if you have, I don't know, the best job in the world, for example, hosting discussions on video games, for example, maybe one day I'd rather be somewhere else on the beach. And even if it's a game, I will get tired of playing. No, don't you think?
So the goal of the systems is not really to play the game. It's more to support you as you perform your job. And if you really think about what we were doing, we were capturing activity, which is taking place in some space. It's in an online space. And then we use this model to deliver value to people. And it's quite interesting because gamification is one use of this activity, but there are many other tools. And because of COVID, we are all now working remotely. And I think a lot of us feel that the communication, even though we have Zoom, even though we have conference systems, the communication is a bit dry. And if you compare the situation with what happens when you share an open space where you work in the same location, it's not the same thing. You lose a lot of this very subtle communication, just looking at the body language, quickly chatting with people. And I mentioned in the video that we've been doing research in these alternative user interfaces that you can develop to try to recreate these kind of things. And the end of the 90s, it was a big research topic. So you consider two physical spaces, people working across locations. How do you try to recreate this sense to share the same physical space and to have a more natural peripheral communication? So at the time, we were doing the same thing. We were trying to capture activity in physical and digital space, creating models, and then recreating representations of that. And the notion of peripheral awareness is really important. It's not a tool that you have to focus on. It's really a tool that delivers a stream of audiovisual cues that keep you informed, that maintain you aware. So when you say you're at the beach and you don't want to work, well, if the tool, if the application is well designed, you keep these subtle notifications. You don't know in details what is happening, but you maintain a general idea of what is happening, and you maintain a sense of being connected to other people. So I think that's the idea. So the tool should disappear from the attention of the user, and it's something that should fade into the background. This notion of calm technology that I mentioned in the video is really about that. How can we have technology disappear and still deliver the functionality to people?
I have a question I have to ask you, Olivier, because I actually love the aquarium, and I can see a lot of other gaming features that you can put in. And if I don't know, if there's a new challenge in the team, then there's, I don't know, the whale that comes, and you have to go a little bit higher with some other things, and you can really build on the aquarium because it's something that everyone knows about. But you must have had this question when I see that my colleague Paul is at the bottom of the fish tank. It's a kind of surveillance of what he's doing, and maybe he's going to be ashamed, or maybe people are going to chat. Have you seen Paul is still at the bottom of the aquarium? How did you tackle this? Because that's a question every game developers has to challenge, because do you have a leaderboard or don't you have a leaderboard? And if you have one, then people are better than others. And And in jobs, it's sometimes a kind of a taboo subject of who is the employee of the month or the week. How did you tackle this issue?
The answer is culture. So this kind of tool is not something that you just deploy without asking the team. It's something that you do together with the team. And in software engineering, this is a question that is discussed a lot. So on one side, it's recognized that to understand your process, understand the quality of your software, you need to get metrics because you cannot improve what you cannot measure. But at the same time, you know that metrics can be used for ill purposes. And so the relationship between the teams and the management, the fact that you are in open culture, collaborative culture is really necessary. So if the culture is unhealthy and you introduce tools like that, then it's very detrimental. So in this case study, it was very well suited because the CTO really wanted to change things, to create a climate where it's okay to put problems on the table. It's the team who is going to improve the situation. And so if you have this, this climate, if it's part of a general willingness to introduce this culture, then gamification and metrics work very well because it's a tool that is provided to the teams and it's not a monitoring system. But it's a very touchy concept, and so you really need to work. And the fact that it's a game, and what I mentioned at the end of the video, the fact that at some point it's the team themselves who develop the game and tune the game, bring the feature, means that they can appropriate themselves the technology, and then acceptance is much better.
And maybe they can put some cheats in the game too, so you can swim up with I don't know, a little bit of magic or something, or seafood you can throw in the tank. I don't know. Yeah, thanks, Olivier, because it's really a good question. It has, games have a lot of good triggers, but sometimes we also have the opposite side. My next question, and I'll ask again our audience, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. If it's just for one of the authors or developers or all three, you can ask whatever questions you have. My next question is quite classic as well when we are speaking about games or gamified environment. It's really the fun questions, because many of the serious games I have seen or played in a way that they remain too serious. They have some goals and some very high goals, and they forget to be games. And I would like to go to you, Alexandra, because I have seen your emotional board game and that you are going through also towards improvisation theater, for example, that is acting, there is playing in the gaming. But is it a fun game to play? I would like to play just to win the game, not to play or act or work on my emotions.
Definitely. So that was one of the, when we designed the games, that was one of the questions as well. We wanted this sort of a competition, but not only that makes me think about your discussion with Olivier, discussion about if I'm better than the other person, what I'm going to do. So this is why on each game we have 2 tracks of points. So that means we can have 2 winners somehow. And that limitates this idea that only one is good or the best. So one thing was having this, the track of points split in 2 and having different competencies on which we can gain points. And it was, I mean, from my experience with the children and the teenagers, it was fun. Actually, what they liked also, it's not the fun, it doesn't only stay in the finality of the game, it also stayed in using and manipulating the material on the board. For instance, the dice, for instance, their tokens, the cards. There was always a curiosity, what is the next card that will come on the board? Even the noise of the dice was fun, and they were playing with the dice, even between the rounds. So I think the fun not only stays in the finality, in gaining points, but also in all this dynamic. Of course, we had dynamics that were less, and that was one of the, of course, it's a comment I would have, the dynamic of the group. We impose these games, whereas when you're playing a game, you go intrinsically towards it. And we do not always have this intrinsic motivation in our players to go and play, right? Because we brought our own games and there you go, please play. And we observed that also in the groups that we have made between players, they didn't like always each other, or maybe they had some affinities, or they were not sharing friendships necessarily. So there was a challenge for them as well to start to collaborate. And this also, it's a game where you have a semi-collaborative interaction, because the way you're going to recognize the emotion, for instance, in others, will give you not only the other person points, but also you will give points to you. So you have no intention, you can't have an intention not to give or recognize correctly and cheat, because you're going to lose points on the other track. But of course, strategies can be found, and players are always very creative. And yeah, I think that would be a very long answer to your question, but yeah.
It's a very interesting one, because yeah, maybe the fun is not only in the final goal, but you have to have some fun. We'll go back to the controller. Thomas, your controller seems very effective, but with all these sensors and this technique, it seems also very tricky maybe to master. It's not just only one cross and two buttons. It's maybe very complex and unique. Can it be fun?
Yeah. Your comment is actually very pertinent, and it's not the first time that we have heard that very same comment. There's just too much stuff going on. So, I mean, I do have a smaller version of the controller, more like, but the feedback that we have been getting is that because there's so much information being transmitted, that just like you said, just a couple of buttons and the motion will be sufficient for the game, for the controller to be effective enough to interact with any type of gaming application. So yeah, I mean, some of the sensors that the controller offers basically work in the background, so to speak. When you are exerting pressure on the handles, all of that information can be collected by the game, the same way that your heart rate or variations in your sweat that gives information about your anxiety level and so on and so forth. So a game designer could eventually write some intelligent games that would divert, or that would drive the game according to this biological feedback information that the user is providing without even knowing he or she are doing it. So yeah, I mean, it's an open book, so to speak. We are trying to make the control to be known. The gaming market is incredibly difficult to break through. Basically, game designers will not write the game for a control that does not exist in the market. And for you to put a control in the market, you need literally millions of dollars. So it's very tricky to bring a new product to market. And there are other controllers that are trying to break through the market. Our strategy right now is actually to partner up with medical doctors, medical professionals that have shown interest in the controller because of the amount of sensory data that you can gather. But yeah, I mean,
I'll maybe come back to this strategy, because my next question is about money, and it's of course one of the maybe more difficult subject to address when we are trying to create some things. And I will just go back to you, Thomas, with the strategy. I just want to hear also Olivier on that fun matter, because people are sometimes you told us that the team has to agree to build a game around their job, and I'm sure it's the good answer, but Should it be unanimous? If you find some team that are unanimous, that's cool. But don't you think that people sometimes feel that their job is not a game and they don't want anything fun, or they don't want their fish in the fish tank? What do you do with someone who says, come on, I can do my job, I just don't want my name in this fish tank. I can do my job seriously and I don't need your fish. What do you say to them?
That's a very interesting question. So I would say the first thing is, it's a bit the answer I gave before. If you take a team who is not really interested, who is not passionate about the job, and you introduce a game, whether it's an aquarium or something else, then the impact will be zero. I feel really spoiled because I just love my job. I just love programming. I love software engineering. I love working with people. So I'm always in this state of mind where we're doing cool stuff. And so I'm a very good public for these kind of things. And the teams that we work with, usually they are tech companies. So we retrieve this kind of passion in the job. But the case study that we presented at Softplan, this was exactly the situation you were talking about. So you've seen in the dates, Softplan is a fairly old company. It's decades of software development. And when we started to work with them, the system, the software had started to get old. And the state of the teams and the morale of the teams was not great. And people were not up to date with the skills. And so we really arrived at a moment where the new CTO said, okay, now I want to fix this. And how do I do? Do I get rid of the existing people and do I get fresh minds, fresh ideas? Or do I try to do something and to create something, to create a trigger? And that's exactly what we did. And so when we started to work with Softplan, and we did not start right away with the aquarium. First, there was the assessment, there was a lot of communication, coaching with the teams. And then at some point we said, okay, so if we introduce the aquarium, it's going to add something on top. And what's amazing, and that's why this case study was so amazing for us, and it's not something that we had planned. I mean, the impact was a kind of a surprise for us. Is the same group of people, because the CTO said, I want to keep the same people, but I want to bring that a level up. You really have a change of mind. So the aquarium is just one element of the story. All the work that the CTO did, and the vision that he shared, and the fact that he put people in motion, that was instrumental. But we really want to avoid to be in this situation that you described, where people are just there and doing their job. No, that doesn't work. If you develop software, you need to have people who care about the business and why are we creating this software. So you need to bring people in this movement, and gamification is one piece of the puzzle that moves people.
And that needs acceptation as well. Thank you very much, Olivier. There's someone, Galouche, on YouTube saying hi to you. I don't know if you know him or her, but we say hi to Galouche as well.
One of my best students.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So he's there with us. Sam Rossetti from GSGS is there too. Hi, Sam. And Terawatt Monor, which was one of the speakers of the previous sessions. You can find the videos of the previous sessions, of course, also in the YouTube. And feel free to ask any questions if you have some. I'll go back to what I was talking with you, Thomas, and money, of course, and we'll talk about that with all three of you. It's another big challenge for serious games and gamified solution. Finding money, because money comes with numbers, and most of the time large numbers of players, of people interested. Your controller, Thomas, seems incredible. I've said it before and I really believe it. I see myself maybe playing as an archer or a Robin Hood with this distortion that you can give, and I really think I could do something great. But most controllers I've seen that are not just simple pads, as you said before, or even mouse and keyboards. I've not seen one of them being bought in every home and being a hit. PlayStation had Move, and Nintendo has had the old dancing mats for older players, or the Wiimote that you talked about, or even Sega with the fishing rod, or PlayStation had a skateboard. Confession, I had it. I had the skateboard. It was awful to play Tony Hawk skateboarding with the skateboard. If you played against someone with the pad, he will beat you every time. Is your Spring controller intended to be the hit, the next generation controller, or is it, and you already maybe gave a little bit of the answers talking with the doctors, is it a controller that needs a niche, that needs somewhere it can be developed and used in a niche?
I do believe that it is incredibly difficult to change the current paradigm of what a game controller is. And that's why it has been around for almost 30 years. I mean, what I'm proposing, what the Spring controller brings that is different, it's just basically to engage. Basically, we are asking the gamers to engage their hands and wrists in a, so basically do a little bit of this type of motion. So we're not asking the user to walk around as you have to do sometimes in VR games, or to do great motions with your arms. So so I don't know if the controller will be able to succeed in terms of large scale sales or large scale use. But the strategy has been for the last year and a half to target a specific market segment, and then get some traction and try to go from there. Because to get funding, it is very difficult. There's a lot of competition, as you know, and to get funding, we have decided to actually narrow down what we want to do with the controller, and to start to market the controller as a device for medical use, for cognitive therapies and for physical therapies. You can put a different type of spring in between the handles with different types of stiffnesses, so you can change the amount of force feedback that the person can deal with. And so there has been some interest from doctors working in medical rehabilitation, both at the cognitive level and also muscle level, to work with the controller. But it is, in fact, a huge challenge to go from concept and to go from prototype to actually put a product in the market. And I'm finding that, I'm working with that and doing that as we speak.
Thank you for this very true comment, and I'm sure it's difficult to do so. Alexandra, same for the board game of emotions. It's of course built in a maybe educational or research environment for the time, but do you think you can maybe translate it in other languages, sell it to the public as a family board game, or is it really for classrooms and professional training?
Yes, so I think we can't, I mean, first of all, we can translate it, but this requires, again, funding, of course. So we also confront ourselves with the problem of funding. It could be used with families. So in the rule book, we are going to introduce certain glossary of terms so that the families can, or the parents could also guide and lead their children throughout the game. And I think most parts of the games, at least the first game, and we have several versions of the second one, they can be used in a family setting. That's not a problem.
But is it one of your goals as well?
Yes, I mean, yes, definitely. We want that these games could be open to anyone. So we can now we'd like to launch a production phase of about maybe 100 games to see how the public receives it. And there was lots of interest in children that they wanted to buy them. And even the professors, the teachers in classrooms were interested, teachers of children, teachers of adolescents. Yeah, there was quite a huge demand, but we don't yet have them produced, but that's in the future. Yes, hopefully with the funding, of course.
Yeah, cross the fingers for that. It's always, of course,
yes.
Difficult. Can you sell your techniques, Olivier? Can you, I don't know, write a manager book about gamification in the industry, or are you more thinking I can be a consultant and I can do that for other companies? How is the strategy around budget and money in your area?
So the case study was a client project. So Softplan was a client, and the game was developed in the context of a paid engagement. For us, it's relatively easy because what I talk about in the video is this business impact. So what we do is we help companies understand the current state of their development process. And development process means really the people, their skills, the way they work together, the development methodologies they use, and then the actual source code and the code base. And so our vision and our message is that if you understand the current situation, and if you can come up with plans to improve the situation, then you have a massive impact. And I talk about quality, I talk about speed, so how fast and how regularly can you deliver features, and I talk about employee satisfaction and retention. And for all these elements, you can really put dollar figures on the table. So to convince the executives and the clients is not that hard. But then again, we don't only sell gamification. Gamification is part of a portfolio
do you
of
think
things
you could?
that we do.
Do you think you could go to a client and say, okay, gamification is what I'm going to sell you today, or is gamification or serious games not that ready? We ask this question every year in the GSGS, but
I mean,
it's a true question.
What we have built, and the aquarium is something that we could productize, and it could even be delivered as a self-service. People could connect it to their systems. That wouldn't be very hard. But the previous questions that you asked, the fact, but are the teams going to adopt and accept? Is there going to be any tension? Is it part of the culture? So just having the game, putting it in self-service, you miss all of that. And I think the value that we bring is really more on the broader thing. So in other words, the gamification and the game elements, it's one of our techniques that we combine with others.
Yeah, but not maybe on itself. I'll just say with you, Olivier, maybe we can have a kind of a short answer to Nicolas Wenck, which he's with us on YouTube. Hi, Nicolas. He's asking, with the aquarium gamification, wasn't the questions how to display metrics in a fun, engaging way, rather than should we show the metrics? Wouldn't an analytics software anyway display them? It's maybe one of the things you said. This team was ready to show the metrics, and then you showed them in a game. But if they weren't ready to show the metrics and everyone's work, then we would have a problem. Is that, I guess it's a question of Nicholas.
So the fact that, if you look at existing teams, the metrics are already there because people use these tools. The data is already there. And in fact, anyone can go to the tool-specific dashboard, get statistics, get information. What we see is that very often people don't take the time, or they don't see the value of going there because it's not part of a strategy. So first, again, this idea to have an iterative process where you set goals, you define the ways to reach these goals, and then you get the metrics to have the feedback and to measure your progress. For me, that's the key thing. The metrics are there to measure the progress you're making and to drive you.
We will move to Alexandra for one more question, but just Olivier Terawatt Monner, one of the speakers of the last session, is there with us as well. Terawatt, nice to have you. He has a question for you, Olivier. Would the fish game be used in assessing a job or promotion or a raise? Would you
never do that. You never do that. If you use metrics to give promotions, people will find ways to game the system. So you never, ever do that.
So that's a very clear answer to you, Terawatt. We will move to you, Alexandra, because Terawatt has another question, which is actually meeting the one I wanted to ask you. Training or learning games don't need to be very high tech to succeed in their purposes. We've seen a lot of very good examples also in GSGS through the years. And today we have two opposites, I would say, on that matter. Cheers board game. Why did you chose this offline game? You could have done it on a computer, even with emotions maybe replicated by a computer, by an AI, by distance playing on video conferences. It would have been good through the COVID period. Why did you choose to go to the board game? It's very important for us to understand why you chose that specific tool. And that's also the question of Terawatt. He's asking, would your game work as an online format? But first, why did you choose the board game?
Yes, it's a very good question. So recently we have seen how even the gamers moved somehow to hybrid games or brought the online games into board games. And there was this even in paper, in journals, you could see these discussions around the boom of the board games and how many people start to buy board games at the moment. And board games seems to regain some field that was lost somehow in the past. And the second reason would be was I think it was created before the pandemic to make people connect and to learn from each other, not only from a computer. However, move them towards an online format completely, I see this very difficult because we would lose a lot of the fun mechanics that we have in the games, actually, that I just mentioned before. And also in the setting of the classrooms, children, they are not allowed with their phones, or they try to avoid in certain ways the computers, the use of computers. So it was very fitted for that. And I wanted to say something else, maybe a hybrid. Yes, maybe a hybrid version of this game that could be possible, I think, where an app could indicate what to do next, or to create obstacles in the game that in the board game, in the real life, you can't do it. So that could be a possibility, I would say.
Yeah, and we have seen many very famous board games. Monopoly, for example, we have those kinds of hybrid games. They have tried this technique, so maybe that could be an option. I said we had two opposites because the Spring controller on the opposite is very high tech. We've talked with you, Thomas, about the sensors and all kinds of innovation, and you just told us that even sweat would be analyzed by your sensors. That is really impressive, I should say. But are you not too much relying on tech and not thinking about how it can be used? Because as I told you, I could see myself shooting an arrow with your controller, but I really don't know what I can do next. And I've seen the game you presented, but yeah, I cannot really understand what can I do in a game with this type of controller.
I think that game designers, I believe that game designers will come up with ideas, even for a simple boxing match where you have two people, maybe that type of action where you have, or you can or you can work with a game. I mean, actually, we started a game that is a wiggle worm, you know, that moves like that, moves like in a motion like this. So anything that has some type of physical component can be easily recreated. And there has to be some careful thinking about how much to rely on hyper-realistic motion and how to blend that with other types of motion that the controller offers. So, but I'm pretty positive that the game designers will come up with very interesting solutions. I have demoed the controller at the very large conference, the Game Developers Conference, which happens every year in San Francisco. And the controller was tried out during 3 days for almost 275 gamers. And the feedback was incredible in terms of ideas, in terms of what they thought. And actually one of the criticisms, so to speak, was the fact that the spring, some people thought the spring was too large. So it was a little too, and on the other hand, some people look the fact it looks so mechanical, that you know it's so you know, punk-like, you know, almost like a controller that is so, you know, has this mechanical component that attracted them. So that's one of the reasons we came up with like I showed you before, a controller that is much smaller, that is much more friendly with a you know. That would be more amenable for people who are used to playing with the PlayStation controller and so on and so forth. So I'm not worried about that component. I do believe that game designers will be incredibly flexible to use a controller. Right now, we are actually working with a group of engineers at a research university close by, and they want the controller for the control of robotics. So they are working with robotic arms, and they're working with us because they do believe that having this, having a human being actually doing things physically, and that physicality translated into a robotic machine, that will make that interaction more rich. So
Thomas, I'll stay with you because Stéphane Gobron has also a question for you, the general editorial chair for GSGS, also saying a controller has a high level of complexity that might not be so convenient for games. However, some professional fields may be interested. You said it yourself, like doctors, surgeons, maybe, I don't know, robotic defense. And for that last part of application, defense, for example, or fighting, I don't know, would you have some ethic boundaries? That's the question of Stéphane Gobron in the way your controller could be used. I don't know if it's for tank maneuvers, for example. Yeah, tanks are maneuvered with two sticks.
I mean, we do know that armies around the world are using drones, and they are using game controllers to drive those drones. And I'm pretty sure that the inventors of the controllers never thought about that nefarious use of their technologies. So yeah, I mean, I would not like to see my technology to be used for warfare type activity. But once you put a product in the market, you know, the user can do whatever they want to do with it. That's really the bottom line. I mean, I don't know how you can impose limitations on that, but yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. Yeah.
Thank you, Olivier. We have about 10 minutes to go in this discussion. I would love to tackle another subject, which is competition in games and serious gaming or gamification. We talked a little bit with you, Olivier, already about the competition in job, and you told us you were very aware of that. Alexandra, I wanted to ask you, when I play, some of the people say when they play, they're not themselves. They can be frustrated or angry or ecstatic or whatever. It depends on the game you're playing. And I was wondering how my gaming emotions would not, I don't know, kill the effect of trying to learn emotions, because I'm in the game and I don't know if I'm acting the same in the game that I would normally in life. And so if you're trying to improve my emotional skills, can you manage that while I'm playing and while I'm being maybe emotionally tense?
That's a very good question as well. I think one of the reviewers said the same and mentioned something about that. So of course, personality traits of the players that always will affect what happens in the game. We have bad losers, bad winners, or all kind of categories of players. That's one thing. We also have states that with which they come in the game, the states that are not related to the game, that were independent from the game. And even though they like playing the game, that particular day, they're not into the mood to do that. So I think these are very good questions. How now I think the game, what does do, it opens some opportunities to speak about emotions and to put a label on how we're feeling. And I think that they somehow help with this.
Actually, I was surprised when I saw your video for the first time. She most probably there is no competition in this game, but there is some competition in the game, and I was really surprised that you chose to implement competition in an emotional skill improvement game. And really, did you thought about that building the game?
Yes, in a certain way, but I think the competition was especially to keep the players immersed in the game and have the flow and have a fun aspect of the game, not only about sharing and asking ourselves questions during the game. So during the game, we are going to ask ourselves, why did you do that? Or why did you express an emotion in a certain way? What did you think about? So we started to have access to the inner world and the inner emotional world, because in the game we still have discussions till we get to the finality of the game, till we get to the winner. And these discussions could help outside of the game and make this less a taboo to speak about how we feel. So yes, the competition, well, it is still there. This is why we went for 2 winners instead of 1 winner somehow. But definitely there are ways to express emotions or to speak about emotions that the game provides just the opportunity, the occasion to speak about that, and might help them to think about their real lives, because some situations that are presented there are situations that they might have experienced already, and they interpret those experiences differently. And that's also, sometimes it happens that we have 2 different interpretations of the same situations, and we share that, and we see that, again, we do not share the same perspective, and we have an emotion that is driven by the way we see things. We interpret things based on our previous experience or memories. And then the real world was coming a little bit into the game by sharing the way of perception.
Thank you very much. Maybe one last round with all 3 of you on feedback, because we know that feedback is very important in gaming. If you don't get any rewards, if your actions don't have a feedback, it's not interesting. And it's also one of the main thing, and Olivier, you said that before in your presentation, in your work, if you don't get any feedback, you most probably won't improve in any field, or if you're very well organized yourself and you can self-assess what you are doing. How is or was feedback important in the way that you designed your aquarium, and maybe you thought about the aquarium while thinking about feedback? How can you explain us a little bit the work you went through?
I think there are 2 levels. So one level is the game is used to deliver feedback. So you say the behavior is to do the exercise. So this is what I'm going to represent in the interface. And so I give feedback to the team on the performance of the team. Is everything on track? What is the progress? So that's really the the feedback that is given through the tool, through the game. Then the second level is we use the game for something like 2 weeks. So the game was used on purpose for a limited period of time. And then at the end of the period, there is a discussion, there is a reflection of the team. And the questions that you ask, so did anyone feel bad because the fish was below? Was it helpful? Should we use that again? That's more an introspection on the practice and the use of the tool. And this process of looking at the way you are working, it's something that's very common in agile teams. So you have things like retrospective meetings where you discuss together and you look at the collaborative way of working. And it should happen very frequently.
Thank you, Olivier. Thomas, we've seen all kinds of sensors. How do you give, that gives a lot of feedback to the game and to maybe the game designers, but how can the player have some feedback in your controller? We have seen, of course, now the controllers, the pads, they are vibrating. They are trying to give us some feedback of what we are doing. So we have the force in your controller. Do you mean to implement other feedback elements for the player, for example?
I mean, there's already so much going on in terms of the interactivity that the controller offers with a particular game that, as you mentioned before, we have to get to the point of obtaining the sweet spots and not to have overkill. I do believe that the physicality that is involved and that the controller calls for the user to actually be moving, somehow, that alone could be enough to get feedback and to get the user engaged. Of course, it's going to depend from game to game the type of feedback that the user is going to obtain and to keep him or her engaged. A year ago, we did a side-by-side comparison between the Spring controller and an Xbox controller at a local science museum with a totally different game. We created a game called Dragonfly Space, which basically it's a spaceship that the user is driving in space, and then some enemy UFOs come in and trying to kill our spaceship. And so the goal of the game is to destroy these UFO enemy ships. And there were several different ways to destroy those enemy ships. And what was interesting to find out was the users that use the game controller, the Xbox game controller versus the users that use the Spring controller. The ones that use the Spring controller could use a feature that would, with the Spring, that would basically generate a black hole, so a very large, sonic boom and a big, explosion on the screen, and all of a sudden you would destroy all the enemy ships around you. And it was very interesting to see how the amount of satisfaction in people's faces that they could just like physically, create something, and they would feel the force because of the force feedback of the Spring. So, so that type of feedback that can be implemented in games, we found it to be very, very interesting. And I'm looking forward to working with other game designers that can come up with different solutions. So, but yeah, we have to find the sweet spot, not to overwhelm the user with a controller that is already so rich with features. And a potential solution would be to have different iterations of the with a different set of sensors in different iterations of the controller.
And so unique. Thank you very much, Thomas, for sharing with us your experience and this controller. I will go to you, Alexandra, as well. How is the feedback not only from the players, but maybe are you looking for feedbacks from, I don't know, teachers, people around also the players? Is that feedback also very important for you?
It is very valuable. So already the players' own feedback, but also what maybe I did not mention because I did not have the time, some of the teachers played with the children and with the teenagers. So in the pilot study that we did this spring, some of the teachers were involved in the game as players. And that showed us how important they found this game and how they were able to follow up based on what happened during the game in the classroom in discussions with the teenagers. So there was a feedback definitely not only from the points, the number of points, the other players, but also from the teachers. And also the feedback was also the behavior that they had during the games that we have observed as researchers was also very important feedback. We mentioned before the cheating, and the cheating actually was for us at the beginning was something that we wanted to avoid. But then we saw that actually the cheating is a way of having fun, and it was an aspect, an element of fun. And in the end, I found this experience quite interesting and giving another perspective on this cheating behavior that you have. Players were immersed. That means for me, for us, for the animators, for the team, meant that they were immersed and they had fun. They wanted to win. They were motivated because cheating involves quite a few cognitive resources. So yeah, it was. I think that's also an important feedback.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. I have just one question that appeared on the YouTube channel. Hi, Bjorn Berg Marklund is with us. Hi, Bjorn. Thank you for asking a question. He says, I've seen a lot of really impressive board games at GSGS during the years. I've wondered, what are your processes of distribution? What challenges do you face, and do you have any solutions? We talked a little bit about that, but maybe you have an answer for Bjorn.
Yes, it's not an easy answer or a question. At the moment, we are collaborating, and I think that's a very important thing, that we researchers should collaborate more with people that are more experienced than us as well in this field. So we are collaborating at the moment with Entrée de Jeu, which is the society in Chaux-de-Fonds in Switzerland. So we chose a local local collaborators, so they can. We consulted them for these for the game design, for illustrations, so they provided the illustrators, they provided the graphic designers. And I think this synergy is very important in creating the game and then moving forward to the production. So for the moment, I can only say about the production phase, we have several places from which we are going to buy the material for the first 100 games. Further, we will see how this goes. And for the distribution, then being in university, we could organize events, exhibitions, and we can also put this on the website. So, but yeah, definitely for the moment, we don't have that many games that we plan to produce. But I'm not sure if this answers the question, but maybe ask me in a few months again.
Thank you, Alexandra, and I'm sure you will get in touch. Bjorn also says again on YouTube, we often struggle getting wide distribution and broad impact in our analog projects here in Sweden. So hi for Sweden. So it would be good advice of your answers, but one of the good thing is maybe that's one of the role that GSGS can play, is putting people together and maybe sharing experiences. And I'm sure you will find also on the live days in Lausanne, you will find a lot of people knowing about board games, and maybe you can share with them. It could be a help, and we are all fishes maybe in the same tank. For if we will take the image from the game of Olivier. Thank you very much, all three of you. It was a pleasure to have you, Alexandra Zaharia, Thomas Enriquez, Olivier Lichty, of course, people who joined us during the video. They can review it. In the beginning, there are some very nice presentation and video presentation of all the games and the controller with some good images as well. We had very original aspects today of the series game. games and gamified world. I would really like to thank all our speakers today and all our audience for the questions. Again, Julien Sen, our technical master, he does not need anything more than a keyboard as a controller to bring us live. That's good for him. Thank you, dear audience. This video and all others are, of course, online. Don't forget to come back on Monday, July the 5th, for the third online session. We will be there at the same time, 2 o'clock. We will talk about health with great speakers again, and I'm sure a good discussion and a passionate audience. See you then. Take care. Don't forget to play, of course. And
thank you
bye-bye.
very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.